Tensions unusually continue to ramp up between the U.S. and Israel as the U.S. ambassador to Israel condemns a settler attack on Palestinian Christians as an act of terror. Then, speaking of fights between people who are usually allies, President Trump is suing Fox News parent company News Corp for $20 billion. But most important of all, your favorite podcaster appears to have been debanked by one of the largest payment processors in the country. And you might be next. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Would you go into debt for your pet? 1 in 3 DINKs, that's dual income, no kids. 1 in 3 DINKs goes into debt for his pet. Something's going wrong. Something's going real wrong. We'll get into the numbers. First, though, I want to tell you about Armra. Go to armra.com/Knowles. We are living in a world our bodies were not built for. EMFs, artificial light, seed oils, microplastics, endocrine disruptors, chronic stress. These modern threats are disrupting our cellular signaling, damaging our gut health, and accelerating aging from the inside out. But what if there were a way to revive your body's natural defenses? Armra colostrum is nature's first whole food, packed with over 400 bioactive nutrients that work at the cellular level to reactivate your body's innate capacity to regenerate and thrive. Unlike probiotics that only address one part of your gut wall, Armra colostrum fortifies your entire gut wall system. It strengthens immune barriers throughout your mouth, sinuses, lungs, gut, and reproductive tract while optimizing your microbiome and combating bloating. Plus, it ignites your metabolism by guarding against toxins that drive inflammation and slow you down. Are you ready to reclaim your health? Well, we've worked out a special offer for our listeners. Receive 30% off your first subscription order. And then, Mr. Davies swears by this stuff. Then you can look like a beefcake like him. Go to armra.com/Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S, or enter Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S, to get 30% off your first subscription order. That's armra.com/Knowles. Very strange situation going on right now between the United States and Israel. U.S. and Israel, usually very close allies, officially, of course, still allies, but tensions are mounting. You're seeing a lot of shade getting thrown between the White House and the administration broadly and the state of Israel. On the heels of the Israeli attack on the only Catholic church in Gaza, which killed 3 Christians, injured 10, including the priest, on the heels of that, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who is extremely pro-Israel, Mike Huckabee threatened to accuse Israel of being unwelcoming to Christians because apparently evangelical groups in America are having trouble getting visas. On the heels of all of that, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, has called a recent Israeli settler attack on a Palestinian church in the West Bank an act of terror. This was an attack that ended up with the death of a Palestinian American who is apparently a Christian. So this Huckabee actually went to visit the Christian town of Taba, where Israeli settlers reportedly started a fire near a cemetery in a 5th century church back on July 8th. Huckabee said, "It is an act of terror and it is a crime. Those who carry out acts of terror and violence in Taba or anywhere should be found and prosecuted, not just reprimanded. That's not enough. A little apology, a little whoopsie-daisy, a little slap on the wrist, not enough, according to the U.S. ambassador to Israel. They need to be prosecuted for their crimes." The Israeli government has not commented on this incident, but has a habit of denouncing these kinds of attacks. Huckabee saying, you got to do more than denounce it. You got to go hard against these people. He's asked Israel to, quote, aggressively investigate the killing of this Palestinian American who was beaten to death by Israeli settlers in the West Bank. Says it's a criminal and terrorist act. What makes this strange, what makes even my commentary on this strange from last week is Huckabee is a big defender of Israel and even of Israeli settlements, according to reporting. And yet he says this is completely outrageous. So I discussed the IDF attack on Friday, I guess it was Thursday or Friday. And I caught a bunch of flack from extremely pro-Israel activists. A bunch of flack. I mean, all the crazy insinuations. You're abandoning Israel. You're anti-Semitic or something. Completely lunatic stuff. And my reaction to that is, if Mike Huckabee and I are the enemies of the state of Israel, then Israel doesn't have any friends, doesn't have a single friend on planet Earth. And this is a big problem. These three incidents, all in rapid succession, pose a big, big problem for the Israeli government. Because what you hear, the typical talking points in propaganda, if you call out the attack on the church, which the state of Israel says was accidental, maybe it was accidental, maybe it was a mistake, but it was a big mistake. If it was a mistake, it was a big mistake. Actually, either way, you would say it was a big mistake. The Latin Patriarch in Jerusalem doesn't seem totally convinced it was a mistake. The Holy Father has condemned the attack repeatedly and called for peace and an end to the war. The typical response, the talking points is, well, you're condemning an Israeli attack on a church, or you're condemning Israeli settler attacks on a Christian community in the West Bank, but why aren't you talking about the Muslim attacks on Christians? And there are some people who are pathologically opposed to Israel or who don't like the Jews or something, who don't talk about Muslim attacks on Christians. But that ain't me, and that ain't Mike Huckabee, and that ain't a lot of the people who are seriously concerned about these attacks in recent days. I think if I had a nickel for every time on this show that I've mentioned the battles of Poitiers, Lepanto, and Vienna, or any other number of Muslim attacks on Christians going back 1,300 years all the way to the present, if I had a nickel for that, I think I could buy a fleet of private jets. You think Mike Huckabee hasn't called out Islamic terror against Christians? Give me a break. But that doesn't mean that we can't criticize the government of Israel when it is right and just to do so. And furthermore, when sometimes people will say, well, why aren't you talking about, I don't know, a Syrian attack on Christians or even a Russian attack on Christians in Ukraine? I say, first of all, we do talk about these things, but even so, we regularly kill Syrians, we the United States. We are currently waging a war against Russia, slaughtering the Russian army through our proxy in Ukraine. We regularly light up the Middle East and blow up Muslim extremists who persecute Christians. The difference here is Israel is our ally. We fund Israel. We fund the Israeli military. So it's an apples and oranges comparison, and the United States has every right. The White House reportedly has every right to be furious over the attack on the church, accidental or otherwise. The administration, through its ambassador to Israel, has every right to be furious when a Palestinian American is killed in a Christian community by Israeli settlers. Has every right to do that, especially when we're signing the checks. I don't think that the pro-Israeli side is playing this very well. I was looking at a poll last night, CNN poll, so take it with a grain of salt. But support for the war in Gaza at this point, people who believe the Israeli actions are totally justified, it's like 23%. It's dropped to extreme lows. It's down to 52%, even among Republicans. Republicans used to support the state of Israel 150%. So this is a real problem. I think it's a sign of the times. If you have someone who's broadly supportive of the state of Israel, like me, someone who has, for decades, like Mike Huckabee, been very, very supportive of the state of Israel, if you have the attention of those guys who are saying, hey, you guys are going way too far, we need more than apologies, we need solutions here, this is not working out. When you have the White House reportedly furious that Israel is going into Syria, as the United States is trying to negotiate peace, you are in big trouble. And I think if the Israeli government wants to survive and thrive and keep on achieving its strategic objectives, it needs to recognize that its one friend on earth, the United States of America, is trying to help it through some criticism. Because if the U.S. if the state of Israel loses serious U.S. support, what's it got on the international stage? Not good stuff. You do not want Mike Huckabee to be lobbing totally justified rhetorical attacks if you are the Israeli government. Not a good sign. Needs a change of strategy. Okay, speaking of fights between allies, President Trump is suing the Wall Street Journal, really the parent company, which is also the parent company of Fox News Corporation, for $20 billion. Why $20 billion? Because the Wall Street Journal just published this supposed letter from President Trump to Jeffrey Epstein. It's got a drawing of a lady on it. It's got all these kind of enigmatic phrases. Trump said that this was a fake letter and should not be published. Wall Street Journal published it anyway. He said, I'm going to sue. A lot of people said, well, look, if this is a really fake letter, then he could sue. But if it's not fake and he's just threatening it, maybe he's just trying to distract from the news cycle. Well, here you go. He's suing, which means that opens him up to discovery, which means seems pretty likely it's a fake letter. Pretty strong evidence that it's not real. Now, what does that mean for the administration? What does it mean for News Corp? What does it mean for allies? We'll get to that in 1 second. First, I want to tell you about Kickoff. Go to getkickoff, KIKOFF.com/Knowles. When budgets are stretched thin, Kickoff offers a smart path to genuine credit building without the burden of costly credit card balances. No credit check required, no interest charges, only $5 monthly, and it can actually boost your score quickly. With clear, budget-friendly plans beginning at only $5 per month, no surprise charges, 0 interest rates, Kickoff helps you win big on the credit front. It's straightforward, you make timely payments, credit agencies notice positive habits, and your credit can improve quickly. Users with credit under 600 grow an average of 84 points in their first year with on-time payments. Plus, with over 1 million users and hundreds of thousands of positive reviews, there's a reason Kickoff is the #1 credit builder on the App Store. I absolutely love Kickoff. I think it's fantastic, and I would strongly encourage you to go get it right now. Sign up in minutes from your phone, no credit check, cancel anytime. Start building credit with Kickoff today. You can get your first month for as little as $1. That is 80% off the normal price when you go to getkickoff.com/Knowles today. Having a better credit score in the long run is going to pay off a lot. Go to getkickoff, KIKOFF.com/Knowles. Must sign up via getkickoff.com/Knowles to activate offer. Offer applies to new Kickoff customers first month only. Subject to approval. Offer subject to change. Average first year credit score impact of plus 84 points. Vantage score 3.0 between January 2023 and January 2024 for Kickoff credit account users who started with a score below 600, who paid on time, and who had no delinquencies or collections added to their credit profile during the period. Late payments may negatively impact your credit score. Individual results, of course, may vary. Folks, very often in high-profile cases and conspiracies, all we get are a few redacted documents and a litany of theories from sources close to the story that never pan out. Other times, you get to sit down face-to-face with someone who was actually there. Like in the latest episode of Michael And, where I sit down with a former P. Diddy escort who was named in the trial. His stories about what happened at a literal level and even at a spiritual level will blow you away. Check out this teaser.
So I don't know who I'm seeing. And so I show up to the address, I go up to the door, knock, and she opens the door.
So you say it's very performative.
She's like, okay, sit there. She puts the towel down. She's like, hey, just pour the baby oil all over me. And I see like the little slit in the room. There were times in the sessions where I saw that demon, the demon that she talked about.
Personal demon, these are the demons that are afflicting me, or Diddy.
Yeah, Diddy.
You actually did this stuff. Your name and your picture were revealed in court.
Revealed in court, and then it was started to go mainstream when 50 posted that picture.
So this guy is a sex-crazed animal.
She was under his control.
Because there's video of him beating her in a hallway.
I was supposed to be there that night. I was supposed to.
Watch a full episode now on the Michael Knowles YouTube channel. For the uncensored ad-free version, subscribe to DailyWire Plus. Very strange. You got the U.S. and Israel all tense. You got Trump and News Corporation. I guess that's more for sometimes President Trump has hit Fox News and the parent company, but very strange to see usual allies fighting. A lot of long simmering tensions finally boiling over. But speaking of a lot of money, I've got some personal news, which is political news, that I have suspected for many months now, but I wanted to make sure that I had all the facts I could possibly gather, because this is pretty explosive as far as I'm concerned. I appear, your favorite podcast host, appears to have been debanked by Stripe. Stripe is the largest payment processor by number of merchants in the United States. So this is no minor service. This is a major service. And the way I found out about this was, at this point, 8-9 months ago, I noticed that there was a glitch in the payments that I get from X. So X pays people for tweets, and it's not a lot of money, but you get these little payments every month. And I noticed they stopped coming through. So I didn't pay much attention to it. Again, it's not a ton of money, but I looked into it and there was some glitch, and then I don't know, clicked a button or two, fixed it. Then in January, it happened again. And I reached out to Stripe and X. And I said, hey, what happened? My payments for my tweets stopped coming through. And Stripe was immediately very, very cagey about it. And they said, well, you have to reach out to X because your Stripe account only works with X. And this is a crucial part to the story, to figuring out why I've been deplatformed, debanked from this payment service. Because I have all sorts of business interests, different companies, all sorts of stuff, books. This service is only tied to X. And when I reached out to Stripe, they said, oh, you got to talk to X. I said, okay, I reach out to X, but X doesn't really get back to me very much. They said, no, you got to talk to Stripe. And they said, no. Stripe says you got to talk to X. We sent them a notice back in October about an issue. And so if you want to hear, I said, well, you have the email. Just tell me what the email is. They said, no, we're not going to tell you, but you got to talk to X. So it was this game of ping pong back and forth for months and months and months. I have the receipts for it, of course. And lo and behold, I finally hear from X that the issue is on Stripe's end, and they sent me a link to reasons that Stripe might suspend your account. And I'm looking through, and it's all sort of stuff, gun running, illicit drugs, whatever. I said, okay, none of this is checking out. And then I saw this little portion. It said, businesses that engage in, encourage, promote, or celebrate unlawful violence toward any group based on race, religion, disability, gender, sexual orientation, national origin, or any other immutable characteristic. Now, the right gets accused of this all the time. If you think that a man can't be a woman, you're accused of committing an act of violence against some community that ontologically doesn't even really exist. Because this account, it's actually a pretty good case study for this, because the account only pertains to my use of X, which is a speech platform, a platform to express opinions, not to run guns or something like that. Because of that, it would seem quite likely, though the payment server won't be forthright about this, it would seem quite likely that I was debanked for my political opinions. I suppose political opinions, it could have been my religious opinions. There's been a ton of anti-Catholic persecution in recent years. The Biden administration sending jackbooted thugs to spy on churches, calling Catholics extremists and radicals. So it could have been that. I don't know why. Could it be one opinion that I've expressed that caught a lot of flack was and defamation from major news outlets was when I said that the ideology of transgenderism has to be eradicated from public life. Was it that? I don't know. I'm only speculating. But if I say men can't become women or something like that, it's just stating a basic fact of anthropology, a fact of the Christian faith, I don't know what it is. But what I do know is this story doesn't only pertain to me. Stripe, the fact that they're being so cagey about it suggests to me they just don't want to admit what is a big political liability. But I know that the Republicans are back in town. I know that the Republicans now control the entire government. I know that debanking is a major political issue. For goodness sake, Stripe, this payment processor, debanked the Trump campaign back in 2021. So this wouldn't be the first time that a conservative or Christian or any other politically incorrect group were debanked based on their views. But I know that there are a lot of Republicans back in Washington, D.C., whose job it is to look into issues like this. And so if I were Stripe, I would be cagey about this too. But this would appear to be a very unjust act that could involve, potentially, millions and millions of Americans. If you are a conservative, if you're a Christian, if you're just a normal person who holds normal political views that everyone agreed on until 5 minutes ago, you are at risk of being debanked by the largest payment processor by number of merchants in the entire country. And until we get an answer from them, maybe it was just a mistake. Everyone likes to, it's just a whoopsie daisy. Until we get an answer from them, I don't see how we can conclude otherwise. And the very fact that I've waited now, not just 6, really more like 8 or 9 months, doing everything I could to get an answer on this, I don't think they can accuse us of being hasty or rash. And I think that maybe some people in Washington, D.C. are going to have a look into that, because this is a big, big political problem. If normal people are being debanked for having normal views, that's a very urgent problem that should probably rise to the attention of the people whose job it is to look into it. Okay. Speaking of financial problems, this is really crazy. This is much more troubling than my being debanked by Stripe. 1 in 3 dinks go into debt for their pets. What's a dink? A dink is a person who is dual income, no kids. You think of the typical coastal, urban, millennial couple. They're not ready to have kids. They might not even get married, but they have their fur babies or something. Really crazy story out of USA Today. There was let me see exactly. I have so many crazy stories today. Here we are. Okay, so according to a new Insurify survey, 68% of dink pet parents say that they've made financial sacrifices to cover essentials for their furry friends. That includes, I kid you not, taking a second job, stopping savings contributions, so no longer saving any money, and skipping medical care for themselves to pay for their dogs and cats. Dink couples who were surveyed spent an average of $1,906 per year on pets, which is a lot cheaper than raising a kid. According to Raising a Kid, or according to reports of actual parents, it's about $23,000 a year to raise a kid. So $2,000 is a steal. But again, you're getting a dog, not a kid. The people surveyed said they would spend up to $5,004 for life-saving treatment and up to $2,835 per year to care for a pet's chronic health condition. It's a lot of scratch. 34% said they worked extra hours or took a second job to cover costs. And 33% said they took on credit card or loan debt to pay for their dog. 29% stopped contributing to savings, 24% delayed paying other bills, 15% stopped personal medical care. Okay. Now, why? Why do they do this? According to the survey, 39% of these people plan to have children someday. So it's 39% at least aren't planning on remaining childless forever and investing all their money in their dogs. 17%, however, said raising kids is too expensive ever to have them. 17% of people who go into debt for their chihuahua say that kids are too expensive and they're not going to have them. 15% said they never want kids, period. And why? Well, 29% say they prefer a lifestyle that allows more freedom. You're free if you go into debt to pay for your poodle, but you're not free if you have a beautiful child who you can raise, who will still grow and flourish and might take care of you someday. 22% said they need to improve their financial situation before having kids. There are many people who feel that way, and I totally get it. But only 5% of these people cited medical or fertility issues as the reason they don't have kids. So it's easy to look at these people and say, look, they can't have kids, they're suffering infertility. The cat or the dog is the second best thing. Why be so harsh on them? Because virtually none of them are dinks for that reason. Only 5%. 95% are dinks and potentially going into debt for their chihuahuas, not because they're infertile, not because they really want to have kids but can't. What is this about? You'd have to be out of your freaking mind to go into debt for your wiener dog. Why are they doing it? Because they have a good impulse, and the good impulse is to sacrifice for a creature that they love. The problem is the impulse has been fundamentally disordered by our decadent culture. Some people seem to think this is really nice and evidence of altruism if you're willing to go into debt for your poodle. Not true. Fur babies, the whole fur baby phenomenon, people referring to their pets as children, referring to themselves as parents when they own a dog or a cat, that is not evidence of altruism. That is a fundamentally selfish phenomenon. And you see it a little bit in the numbers here where they say, it's too expensive to have kids. I want to have freedom. I want to be able to go to brunch and go on European vacations, and that's too hard with kids. Fur babies are a selfish phenomenon. Having children is a selfless phenomenon. Having children, not only is having children selfless in the sense that you have to sacrifice a lot for your kids, having children is selfless in the sense that it is patriotic. It is your civic duty. If you need to close your eyes and think of America, okay, when you're in the process of making a child, because it is your duty to have a country that has children that can perpetuate into the future. It's also wonderful on a personal level and a sublime experience and enriching in every way. But it is also conducive to the common good. You can't have a country if people don't have kids. And a lot of people aren't having kids right now, and they're replacing kids and their natural desires for kids with little chihuahuas that they push around in strollers and they take a second job for. That is selfish. Fur babies are entirely indulgent, self-indulgent, because it gives you a little bit of the feeling of having a kid, a little fraction of an iota. But if you don't have kids, then you don't realize. It gives you a little fraction of an iota of the feeling of having a kid with none of the responsibility. If the dog gets run over by a car, you're going to have a bad weekend, but then you'll be fine. You'll move on. None of the responsibility and none of the payoff. They don't really do anything. People love their dogs. People love their cats. It's kind of nice. They make your household a little more lively, but they don't really do anything beyond that. Having children does something. Having children echoes throughout the ages and the generations, makes a country strong. This is a big problem. Not everyone gets to have kids. 5% of these people suffer infertility, and that's a terribly painful thing, and I get it, and they should have their dogs, and they should love their dogs. The 95% who are choosing puppies over kids are screwed up in the head, and they need to go to therapy, and they should probably go to confession, and they need to get their life in order, and then they need to go into the boudoir, and they need to close their eyes and think of England. They need to close their eyes and think of America, and they need to have kids, and they're going to have a better life for it. Okay. Speaking of disordered behavior, horrible story out of the New York Post. We were mentioning the Diddy escort earlier. Another star has died, and this should cause reflection on the whole industry. Probably won't, but it should. I'm going to try to make that cause reflection on the whole industry. We'll get to that in 1 second. First, I want to tell you about lean. You need to go to takelean.com, use code Michael20, the number 20. Do not mistake what I'm about to tell you for another injectable weight loss solution. This is something entirely different. These impressive weight loss results come from a physician-developed dietary supplement called Lean. Lean was developed by medical and academic professionals as an alternative to GLP-1 medications, eliminating the need for injections. Research on the components in Lean demonstrates their ability to regulate glucose levels, significantly decrease hunger sensations, and enhance metabolism by utilizing fat stores as an energy source. Real people have seen real results. Lori M. wrote, quote, "I've struggled to get weight off, and Lean has been a lifesaver. I've been losing a couple pounds a week or more." I think this is really great. You know, people have been trying to lose weight since time immemorial. Some ways are much, much better than others. This one, though, I can see it, has been quite effective. Our very own DailyWire account executive, Butch, started taking Lean and has already dropped more than 7 pounds in 2 weeks. He's been so impressed with how effective Lean has been in such a short period of time. I know other producers and staff here at DailyWire have also taken it themselves with excellent results. If you or someone you know is struggling to lose weight and a healthy diet and exercise don't seem to be enough, Lean is for you. Let's get you started with 20% off. Use code Michael20 at takelean.com. It's code Michael20, takelean.com, takelean.com. Results vary. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease and is not a substitute for care from a healthcare provider. Really sad story out of the New York Post. Tragic curse. Kylie Page, 7th rated star to die of drug-related causes in the last 3 years. So Kylie Page is apparently a 28-year-old who's found dead in her home. Looks like an overdose, I guess. And or maybe it was suicide. No, it was an overdose. In the last 3 years, at least 6 female actresses have succumbed to the deadly lifestyle, be it direct suicide or indirect suicide through drugs and various poisons. And this is nothing new. You might not have ever heard any of these names or any of these people, but you've heard this story a billion times. Another spate of actors and actresses dying. I interviewed a male actor. This was a couple years ago now, Josh Broom. And he said, oh yeah, I had 30 some odd friends in the industry and like 28 of them are dead or something like that. It's a very deadly industry. And so I guess my question is this. You don't need to know anything about this, and you should not know anything about this industry to be able to look at that number, look at those statistics and say, hold on, something's really wrong here. In what other field of work would we tolerate these kinds of numbers without serious regulation? You look at football, one football player gets CTE. All of a sudden, you've got massive regulations in professional football. You got all sorts of new gear and protection, and you've got parents calling to ban the sport for kids because a handful of football players get their heads knocked around a little bit. You have just a constant slew of stories of very young people in their 20s, dying from suicide and drugs because of this hideous, awful, satanic industry. And yet that industry is basically wholly unregulated. It used to be heavily regulated. It used to be effectively banned because we've had obscenity laws in this country since before the founding of this country. They're still on the books. We could still prosecute people for them. And in fact, the Bush administration, the second Bush administration, the end of its second term, did prosecute for obscenity at the federal level. So we could do it. It wouldn't be that hard. There's been bipartisan support in Congress in the 90s and the 2000s with the support of the president to restrict this stuff, struck down by lunatic judges. But how can you, just from a workplace standpoint, just from a labor relations standpoint, how on earth can you allow an industry like this where all the most famous people in it end up killing themselves one way or another? How do you allow that to go on unmolested, pun intended? How do you allow that to go on unregulated? We wouldn't tolerate this in manufacturing. We wouldn't tolerate this in sports. We wouldn't tolerate this in anything. But we tolerate it in this degenerate, disgusting industry that screws up the lives of the people who are in it, and, no less, screws up the lives of all the people who use it. It's just pure poison. The of glittering images. Crazy stuff. And I think any legislator who is not a complete freak pervert needs to get on this right now. Any federal regulator, or state regulator for that matter, who isn't just a complete pudding-brained pervert needs to get on this right now and heavily regulate this industry and ideally regulate it out of existence. You've seen some good movements on this recently. A lot of states, really just conservative states. The Democrat-run states, seems like they've got an abundance of perversity there in the government, so they don't regulate it. But the conservative states have, and have made great strides at eradicating from those states. Even just by saying that there has to be age verification so little kids don't look at it. You get the companies and say, hold on, you're telling me we have to make sure that little children aren't viewing our product? We'd rather stop doing business in the state altogether, which tells you everything you need to know about those companies. Yeah, let's get on it, guys. We wouldn't tolerate it in any other field, any other industry. Shouldn't tolerate it here. Okay, speaking of threats to health, the White House at the end of last week, I meant to get to this last week, but it's an important story to get to. Not because of the story itself, but because of what it says about the two sides of politics in America. The White House announced that President Trump has a minor age-related leg condition.
On another note, I know that many in the media have been speculating about bruising on the president's hand and also swelling in the president's legs. So in the effort of transparency, the president wanted me to share a note from his physician with all of you today. In recent weeks, President Trump noted mild swelling in his lower legs. In keeping with routine medical care and out of an abundance of caution, this concern was thoroughly evaluated by the White House medical unit. The president underwent a comprehensive examination, including diagnostic vascular studies. Bilateral lower extremity venous Doppler ultrasounds were performed and revealed chronic venous insufficiency, a benign and common condition, particularly in individuals over the age of 70. Importantly, there was no evidence of deep vein thrombosis or arterial disease. Laboratory testing included a complete blood count, comprehensive metabolic panel, coagulation profile, D-dimer, B-type natriuretic peptide, and cardiac biomarkers. All results were within normal limits. Okay,
compare this. Obviously, we pray for President Trump's health. Luckily, this is not a serious affliction, but nevertheless, we want to make sure he's very healthy and lives a long time. Compare this to the Biden administration. So President Trump has a little bit of swelling in his legs. That's basically what the issue is. He has a little bit of swelling in his legs. And the White House press secretary comes out after some speculation about his leg looked a little bigger, says, hey, the president has this vein issue in his legs. It's totally common for people who are over the age of 70, and it's not particularly threatening, but it's being treated right now. Here are all the specifics on it. Here are all the tests that have been run. Here's what it means. Here's what it doesn't mean. Here's everything. And it goes on and on and on with all this medical jargon. At a certain point, you say, okay, I got it. But she wants all of the information out there. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's head had melted and he was drooling and he couldn't say his own name when he was president. And the White House physician comes out and says, he's in great shape, he's terrific, no serious health problems whatsoever. We later find out President Biden almost certainly had cancer, known cancer, at the time he was president. It is completely implausible that President Biden would be diagnosed with advanced, easily detectable cancer so short after he left the White House. Obviously, that was known when he was president, which is almost certainly why Kevin O'Connor, the White House physician under Biden, pled the fifth against self-incrimination when he was asked whether or not there was a cover-up of Biden's health. Compare those two things. President Trump has a minor leg swelling issue. The White House, completely transparent, tells you everything you need to know about it. President Biden's head didn't work anymore and he had cancer. The White House lies. Big, big difference. So refreshing to see this. And it gives us the opportunity to pray for President Trump's health. And we're glad to know that he's got this issue under control and it's being monitored. And it's a reminder that the president has doctors around him 24/7. So the Biden cover-up is totally implausible, ridiculous, probably smart for that physician to plead the fifth so he doesn't go to jail. Absolutely the right thing to do. Great stuff. It's not great that President Trump has a minor health issue, but great stuff that we're seeing this kind of transparency. Okay, now we got to turn to Capitol Hill because there's a Republican on Capitol Hill. No bueno. Really bad stuff. You got Republicans win unified government running on mass deportations because of how sick we are of the illegal aliens coming into this country. And what do the liberal Republicans on Capitol Hill do? They take that as an opportunity to demand a mass amnesty of the... You can't expect anything else than for Capitol Hill Republicans to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. We'll get to that in 1 second. First, there's a lot happening in the news right now. There's only one place you're getting the real story, and that's DailyWire Plus. The most trusted voices in conservative media are all in one place. And yes, we are adding to the lineup. Isabel Brown's brand new show launches this fall on DailyWire Plus. You will also get access to all of our premium entertainment, including Journey to the UFC, the Joe Pyfer story premiering this Friday. Join a community of people with the same values, the same beliefs, the same common sense as you. Head on over to DailyWirePlus.com to join now. My favorite comment on Friday is from ATWLR7320. Love how the guy dives under the seat and leaves the woman to fend for herself. Such a gentleman. I suppose this is referring to Coldplaygate. The former CEO of Astronomer. There's an update there. I don't know if we'll have time to get to it, but it's not a long story. The guy who got caught cheating at the Coldplay concert, he's resigned. He's been pushed out of his job. Yes, though, you're right. He dives under, leaves the woman to fend for herself. It's amazing. The man who's cheating on his wife, the mother of his children, with the HR lady at his office, brazenly, openly at a concert, turns out he's not the most chivalrous fella in the whole world. Shocking. Okay, turning to Capitol Hill. The Trump administration, the Republicans get elected with the popular vote on mass deportations. Not just the face-tattooed gangsters, Abuela and the gardener. We're talking 11 to 16 million illegal aliens in the country. That's a conservative number. The popular vote, people of all backgrounds, Hispanic, Black, women, all these backgrounds, vote. They say, we want to boot these people out of the country. So, of course, Republican Congressman Maria Salazar is pushing for mass amnesty.
President Trump, sir, the same God who saved you from death in Pennsylvania 1 year ago and who put you back in the Oval Office against all odds is the same God Almighty who millions and millions are begging to for some type of dignity, not amnesty. Sir, I believe that you could be for immigration what Lincoln was for slavery and Reagan was for communism. You are a businessman who understands our economy needs a reliable working force in areas where other Americans don't participate. You stopped Iran on its tracks. You stopped China from eating our lunch. You took the economic oxygen away from Maduro, and you signed the BBB the day that you said you were going to sign it. You have been called to do this, to fix this 40-year mess with just one signature. Yours.
Mr. President, you have been called to do this. You remember like 6 months ago and 8 months ago when you got elected, running on no amnesty ever and mass deportations, and all the people called on you to deport all the... Well, that's why I concluded that you were called on to give all of them amnesty. Does this lady's brain work? Did she pay attention to what happened in November? I am not calling for amnesty. I'm calling for dignity. And dignity entails amnesty, by the way. That's what you have to get the dignity, you have to do all the amnesty. But that's not amnesty. I'm not calling for amnesty. I'm calling for dignity and then amnesty. Or rather, dignity by way of amnesty. Good grief. Good grief. These people, this woman is awful. This woman is absolutely awful. And any Republicans who associated with her might as well be Democrats. I mean, this is just absolutely pathetic. But then you think it's bad enough. This woman's saying, God demands that you violate the law, violate your promises to millions of Americans, most of whom voted for you. Not only did she say that, you're going to be Lincoln. For giving amnesty to a bunch of criminals, millions of criminals, is the same thing as freeing the slaves. Now, really laying it on thick. Not only did she say, this is about dignity, this is about America and defending America and American values. And how am I going to prove it? By speaking a foreign language.
Señor presidente, el mismo Dios que se lo salvó a usted de la muerte en Pensilvania hace solamente un año y que le puso de vuelta en la oficina oval en contra de todo pronóstico, es el mismo Dios todopoderoso al que millones y millones le están rogando hoy por dignidad, no por amnistía.
No por amnistía. No, ¿qué? Listen. What I'm discussing on the Dignity Act is entirely about the American interest and defending American values, as American as apple pie and Abraham Lincoln. And that's why I'm going to speak a foreign language. I like the Spanish language. It's a fine language. I don't speak it. I speak Italian, touch of French, love Latin. I have no xenophobic hostility toward foreign languages. But just a little bit of political advice. If you're trying to convince Americans of something, at least for now, we'll see. If she gets her mass amnesty, I guess the national language could be Spanish. But if she doesn't, when you're trying to convince Americans of something, don't speak a foreign language. What's the matter with you, woman? What an awful, awful congressman. Is she out of her mind? The one smart thing she did here is she tried to flatter Trump into doing this. She decided not to run against Trump, but to say, no, listen, Mr. President, you need to violate all of your campaign promises to the millions and millions of people who voted for you, because that's really what they want you to do, or whatever. And God wants you to do it, to violate the law and break your promises. But other than that, everything about this is wrong. Completely insane. That woman should be thrown out of Congress. What a joke. What a joke. ¿Cómo se dice joke? How do you say joke in Spanish? I don't know. Now, let's turn from the Republicans to the Democrats. Obama has come out of the woodwork to give some advice to his wayward party. And his advice is to toughen up. This comes reportedly from a private fundraiser in New Jersey. Obama said that the only way Democrats are going to win is by toughening up. He says, I think it's going to require a little bit less navel gazing and a little less whining and being in the fetal positions. And it's going to require Democrats to just toughen up. This is according to reporting from CNN, remarks exclusively obtained by CNN. Don't tell me you're a Democrat, but you're kind of disappointed right now, so you're not doing anything. No. Now is exactly the time that you get in there and do something. Don't say that you care deeply about free speech, then you're quiet. No, you stand up for free speech when it's hard. When somebody says something that you don't like, but you still say, you know what, that person has a right to speak. What's needed now is courage. I love this, the left. The Obama left, talking about the importance of free speech. These are the people who relentlessly tried to censor us and continue to try to censor us. Now we need to stand for free speech. What is he saying? What he's really saying is, all this woke stuff isn't working and you need to toughen up. All the people who are demanding, he's like 10 years late to the party on this, but all the people who were demanding safe spaces and censorship, you need to toughen up, kids. You need to get with the program. This isn't playing. The extreme wokeness is not playing. Okay, there are plenty of Democrats who have said this. It's not really resonating in the party, obviously, the party which is elevating Zohran Mamdani and AOC at the moment, one for mayor of New York, one for president. But I guess the question I have for Obama is, who do you think unleashed the wokeness? Who do you think unleashed the heavily racial identity politics that abandons the classical liberalism for the natural conclusion of liberalism, which is this kind of selfish grunting politics of pure personal interest? Who did that? Who was the guy who lit the White House up in rainbows to celebrate the redefinition of marriage from the Supreme Court? Who was the guy who promoted transgenderism? Who was the guy who attacked the Cambridge police because of the Henry Louis Gates affair. Most people probably don't even remember that one. A terrible race baiting from Barack Obama, insinuating that the Cambridge police were racist because this lunatic professor was trying to break into his own home and they didn't know who he was. No one knows who this guy is. Who was the guy who said "cool clock, Ahmed" when a kid brought what looked like a bomb into school and in order to grandstand on the supposed terrible crime of Islamophobia, decided to make a national issue out of it? It was Obama. Obama's the guy who inaugurated wokeness. He was the first woke president. And now the chickens are coming home to roost, kid. Sorry. Sorry, that's what happens. Totally being hoisted with his own petard. Because here's what he wants, and this is what all the liberals want, and here's what the squish Republicans want too, and they need to take note. What Obama wanted to do was take liberalism this far but no further. That's what he's saying. He says, when he was inaugurated, he said, we got to fundamentally change America. I want to take liberalism much, much further than it's gone before. That's what that phrase meant. He says, I want to take liberalism much, much further. I don't just want to permit homosexuals in the military. I want open transsexuals in the military, and I want to light the White House up in rainbows, and I want to redefine marriage. And I don't just want to have a kind of politically correct racial political order. I want radical race baiting all the time, and I'm going to say that some kid Trayvon Martin looks like me. Why? Because he's black or something. I want to start BLM under my presidency, but I want to only go this far. I don't want to trans the kids. I don't want necessarily race riots all over the streets if it's going to hurt Democrats. I want to take liberalism this far but no further, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because ideas have a momentum of themselves. And so the example I've used frequently, which is an apt example, I think, is when you begin with feminism, with the premise that men and women are not complementary but identical, when they're interchangeable, they're exactly the same. Anything a man can do, a woman can do, and vice versa. It is inevitable that left to its own progression, you're going to end up with transing the kids. It's inevitable. These men and women are basically the same. Why can't a man become a woman? If it's true, if that's a part of human nature, then why can't it be true for a little kid? Why does it only become true when you turn 18? It doesn't make any sense. And so Obama's trying to do something that's impossible. And unfortunately, there are a lot of Republicans who want to do this too. They say, if only we could get back to the 90s, if only we could get back to that, that halcyon era of extremely advanced liberalism, but that wasn't totally woke. Not going to happen. So Democrats are hurting because of this. Republicans should not fall for that trap. As I frequently say on the show, we don't want to go back to 2012. We want to go back to 1220. Now, you can't actually go in reverse and we want to keep modern dentistry or whatever, but we want to rethink the premises that have led us to this insane, ugly moment in our political order. Okay. Speaking of, really important story, President Trump finally calling on the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Indians to change their name back. Whatever the new stupid name is, like the Washington football team, or I don't know what it's called, and the Cleveland Guardians, it's really Cleveland Indians. Trump's taking that on. We don't have time to get to it today. We're going to have to get to that tomorrow because it's Music Monday. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, KNWLAS at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.